You walk into a diner just looking for a quiet breakfast, but you leave feeling like you've been caught in the eye of a storm. The local cop decided his badge gave him the right to humiliate anyone who didn't fit his narrow view of the world. Spitting in my plate in front of a crowd? Bold move. Except he had no idea who I was or what was coming next. Let's start from the beginning. You won't want to miss this. Alright, so here's how it all went down. Picture this. Small town America, a dusty diner with peeling paint on the walls, and the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the air. It's the kind of place where everyone knows your name, or at least thinks they know who you are. And trust me, that's not always a good thing. I walked in that morning looking for a quiet corner to sip some coffee and sort out my thoughts. It was one of those days where the world just feels off, you know? Like something is about to happen and you don't know if it's good or bad. Spoiler, it was bad. Real bad. The diner was buzzing with the usual crowd. Truckers in flannel, moms trying to keep their kids from smearing ketchup everywhere, and a group of cops who always thought they owned the place. You know the type, leaning back in their chairs, laughing too loud, acting like their badge gives them the right to treat everyone like dirt. And leading the pack, Officer Bill. Big guy, bad attitude, and a face like he just bit into a lemon. Let's just say he wasn't exactly a people person. I picked a booth in the corner trying to stay out of sight, but of course that's impossible when you're new in town and wearing a suit in a place where most people think business casual means a shirt without holes. The whispers started before I even sat down. Who's that guy? Probably one of those city folks. Thinks he's better than us. I ignored them. I mean, I've heard it all before. But then came the moment I couldn't ignore. As I was going over the menu, debating whether I trusted this place's idea of organic, I heard the heavy stomp of boots coming my way. I looked up, and there he was. Officer Bill, grinning like he just found his next victim. "Hey there, fancy suit," he said, leaning on my table like it was some kind of interrogation. "What brings you to our neck of the woods?" His tone was friendly enough, but his eyes told a different story. This guy wasn't here to chat. He was here to remind me of my place, whatever he thought that was. I smiled politely, keeping my cool. "Just passing through," I said. "Looking for a decent cup of coffee." Bill laughed, a sharp, mocking sound that made my skin crawl. "Decent coffee? You might be in the wrong town for that, pal." At that point, the waitress came over with my order. A simple plate of eggs and toast. Nothing fancy, but enough to get me through the morning. She looked nervous as she set it down, like she knew what was about to happen and didn't want any part of it, and then it happened. Bill reached over, snatched the plate, and leaned down like he was examining it. Looks good," he said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. "But, you know what would make it better?" Before I could say a word, he spat right in the middle of the eggs. The diner went silent, like you could have heard a pin drop. My first reaction was disbelief. Did that really just happen? Then anger. Pure, unfiltered anger. But I didn't show it. Instead, I looked him right in the eye, calm as can be. "Is that how you treat everyone around here?" I asked, my voice steady. Bill smirked. "Only the ones who think they're better than us." I stood up slowly, making sure every eye in the diner was on me. "Well," I said, grabbing my coat, "thanks for the warm welcome." And with that, I walked out, leaving the plate and the humiliation behind. But trust me, that wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. I didn't need to turn around to know all eyes in the diner were glued to me as I walked out. That kind of tension? You can feel it, like electricity humming in the air, just waiting for something or someone to explode. As soon as I hit the sidewalk, I took a deep breath. Not because I was rattled, okay, maybe a little, but because I needed to focus. People like Officer Bill, they thrive on reaction. Show them you're shaken, and they've won. I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction, but trust me, I was already calculating my next move. Let's back up for a second, though, because here's the thing. I wasn't just passing through like I told Bill. No, I was here on official business. And the irony? That guy had no idea how official, but we'll get to that. I had just enough time to stop by my motel room and swap the suit jacket for something a little less, well, attention-grabbing. Small towns have a way of making you feel like an alien if you don't blend in, and after what just happened, I didn't need any more spotlights on me. As I made my way to the local precinct, the streets felt quieter than they should have been. It's not like the place was bustling to begin with, but there was this weird vibe in the air, like the town itself was holding its breath. You know the kind of silence I'm talking about, the one that screams, "Something's about to go down." The station was a small brick building with a fading police department sign out front. Nothing fancy. Inside, it smelled like old coffee and stale donuts, with a faint whiff of paper that hadn't been touched since the 90s. At the front desk sat a woman in her mid-50s, her glasses perched low on her nose as she typed furiously on an ancient keyboard. Her name tag read Margie, and the look she gave me when I walked in could have melted ice. Apparently, charm wasn't a job requirement around here. "Can I help you?" she asked, not even looking up from her screen. "Actually, yes," I said, keeping my tone polite but firm. "I need to speak to the officer in charge." Margie raised an eyebrow, finally glancing up at me. "And you are?" I smiled. "Let's just say I'm someone who has some questions about your team's behavior." Her eyes narrowed. But before she could respond, a door slammed open at the back of the station and out walked the man of the hour, Officer Bill himself. His face lit up with surprise when he saw me standing there, but not the good kind of surprise. No, this was the "why is this guy here, and how fast can I make him leave?" kind. Well, he said, crossing his arms and leaning against the desk. "Fancy seeing you again. Couldn't stay away, huh?" The smugness dripping from his voice was almost unbearable, but I kept my cool. "You could say that," I replied. "Thought I'd take a closer look at the department that runs this town." Bill's grin faltered just a little. Not much, but enough to tell me I'd struck a nerve. "What's that supposed to mean?" he asked, his tone edging on defensive. "Relax," I said, holding up my hands. "I'm just here to observe. You know, see how things operate around here." Margie looked between us like she'd just realized this wasn't a casual conversation. Bill," she said cautiously, "should I call the chief?" "No need," I cut in quickly, giving her a reassuring smile. "I'll be meeting him soon enough." Bill's face turned a shade darker, like he was trying to piece something together but didn't quite have all the puzzle pieces yet. "You're not from around here, are you?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "Not exactly," I said, leaving it at that. The less he knew, the better. For now. Before things could escalate, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway behind us. All eyes turned as a tall man in a sharp suit stepped into view. He had that air of authority about him, the kind that makes people sit up a little straighter. "Mr. Carter," he said, extending a hand to me. "Welcome. We've been expecting you." And just like that, Bill's smirk disappeared completely. I shook the man's hand, my smile never wavering. "Thanks for the warm welcome," I said, making sure to glance at Bill as I spoke. His expression was priceless. Confusion, irritation, and maybe even a hint of panic all rolled into one. "Follow me," the man said, motioning toward a conference room down the hall. "We have a lot to discuss." As I walked past Bill, I couldn't resist throwing one last comment over my shoulder. "Oh, an officer? We'll catch up later." His jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. But hey, he'd made his bed. Now he was about to lie in it. And trust me, the next chapter? It was going to be unforgettable. The conference room wasn't exactly glamorous, just a long wooden table, a handful of mismatched chairs, and a coffee maker in the corner that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the Clinton administration. But it wasn't the room that mattered. It was the stage. And right now, I had front row seats to a show I'd been planning for weeks. The man who greeted me, Deputy Commissioner Harris, closed the door behind us. His expression was all business, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes, like he was trying to figure out what kind of guy I was. "I trust your trip was uneventful," he said, motioning for me to take a seat. "Uneventful isn't exactly the word I'd use," I replied, sliding into one of the chairs. "But let's just say it's been enlightening." Harris raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Care to elaborate?" I leaned back, keeping my tone casual but firm. "Let's just say that certain members of your department have some interesting ideas about public service." Before he could respond, the door swung open, and in walked the one and only Officer Bill. His face was a mix of confusion and defiance, like he wasn't sure whether to act tough or start sweating. Behind him, a couple of other officers followed, whispering to each other and glancing my way. "What's going on here?" Bill asked, his voice just a little too loud. Why is he in a meeting with you? Harris didn't miss a beat. Bill, sit down. This concerns you. The color drained from Bill's face, but he did as he was told, plopping into a chair like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. The other officers stayed by the door, clearly not wanting to be part of whatever was about to go down. I waited a beat, letting the silence hang in the air. Then I stood up, straightened my tie, and turned to face the room. Let me introduce myself, I began, keeping my voice steady and calm. My name is Jason Carter. I'm your new police chief. You could have heard a pin drop. Bill's mouth fell open, and his face went through about 5 different shades of red before settling on something close to panic. You've got to be kidding me, he finally sputtered. This is some kind of joke, right? I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Oh, I never joke about things like this, officer. You see, I was appointed to this position to address some ongoing issues in this department. And after my experience this morning, I'd say we have plenty to talk about. Bill started to speak, but Harris cut him off. Bill, you'll have your chance to explain yourself. But for now, I suggest you listen. The tension in the room was palpable. The other officers shuffled uncomfortably, clearly trying to figure out whether to back Bill or distance themselves from him. I didn't give them much time to decide. Here's the deal, I continued, pacing the room. This department has a reputation, and not the good kind. People don't trust you, they don't feel safe coming to you for help, and after what I witnessed this morning, I can see why. Bill's eyes narrowed, but he stayed silent, for now. This morning, I said, turning to face him directly, you decided it was appropriate to harass a man in public, to humiliate him, to spit in his food, for crying out loud. Do you know how many witnesses were in that diner? How many people saw you abuse your authority? Bill tried to cut in. Look, I didn't know who you were. That's exactly the point, I shot back, my voice rising just enough to make my point clear. You didn't know who I was? You assumed I was just some guy you could push around. Is that how you treat everyone? Is that what you think being a cop is about? The room was dead silent. Even Harris looked uncomfortable, but he didn't say a word. This was my show now. Here's what's going to happen, I said, stepping closer to Bill. There's no room in this department for people like you. Your badge doesn't make you untouchable, and it sure as hell doesn't give you the right to act like a bully. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending a full investigation. Bill shot out of his chair. You can't do that. I've been on this force for 15 years. And how many of those years were spent abusing the trust this community placed in you? I countered. Sit down, Bill. To my surprise, he did. Maybe it was the weight of the moment, or maybe he realized he'd already lost. Either way, I wasn't done. This department is going to change, I said, addressing the rest of the room. We're going to earn back the trust of this community one day at a time. That means accountability. That means respect. And that means people like Bill here are going to be held responsible for their actions. I let my words sink in for a moment before turning back to Harris. You'll oversee the investigation. Make sure it's thorough. Harris nodded, his expression unreadable. Understood. As I left the room, I could feel the weight of every eye on me. Bill slumped in his chair, staring at the floor, while the other officers exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the game had changed. And as for me, I walked out of that station with my head held high, knowing this was just the beginning. What would you have done in his place? Do you think he handled the situation the right way? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this story if it resonated with you. Have you or anyone you know experienced something similar? Let us know. We'd love to hear your perspective. This story was created to shed light on an important issue and to inspire positive change in the world. Your voice matters, and together, we can make a difference. Your opinion has value, and it can help bring awareness to the challenges many people face every day. Let's make the world a better place, one story at a time.